Hello, replay viewers. I'm just going to, you know what? I forgot that I need to make a shout out to my Twitter friends, so I'm going to do that. Yes. A second. There we go. And I'm going to okie dokie. So there we are. So I just realized that I have no way of knowing, I think. No, actually I do have a way of knowing if I have any commenters in the room. I can always check Twitter on my phone. So hopefully the audio is working good. So what we're looking at is a closet, and it's a particular variety of African wood, and you can kind of see it's like really narrow kind of coloring. There's very like thin lines that are all very parallel, and it's all, you know, from one end to the other. It's like the same thickness here. So this is a walk-in closet that is furnished in this particular African wood. And if you notice that tape that's at the ceiling, it's covering a vent here. So the problem or the issue is that there is no grate to decoratively cover that vent. And through a lot of searching, there really wasn't anything available that you could buy as a ready-made that one could get, because you can get ready-made vent grates, but they come in standard sizes. Now this opening is not a standard size. The dimensions of this are 1 3/4 inches by 17 inches. So generally a grate would, you know, go beyond those dimensions. That was basically 3 inches, let's say, wide by 19 inches long, something to that effect. So nothing like that existed, and I spent a lot of time looking online for things that possibly could fit into that. So let's look and see if we can here's another view of the vent. So I assume there was some kind of work that was done and a new lining is put inside, and then they did some flashing here with some metallic tape. So basically the idea is to find something to cover that so it disappears such. So at this point this is how it looks. And so this felt to me, basically. You can see other examples here of the type of wood that we were interested in maybe copying or finding. So the idea was to find a grate that would fit, we'll call it a ready-made, and then I, being a finisher, amongst other titles, would create a finish that would match this particular wood interior. So let's kind of look around. So I did go online. Hold on a second. I did go online looking. You can see these are standard grate sizes. I can't remember. This is probably, you know, 5 inches by 9 or something to that effect. And I'm trying to, you can see here, like, look, you've got decorative. So this is a thin one, but you see it's 3 inches and it's 24 inches. So the width was good, but the length was not good. And if you notice, you need like a kind of an even border. So if you were to cut it, let's say if I needed only 19 inches, I would end up having, you know, a mismatching edge, which is not great. And if you notice, here's the price of this. Is one example of a grate. And it's cast aluminum, so it's not even bronze, and they're already asking in the neighborhood of $200. I mean, I did go to Home Depot and I saw some shapes or sizes that weren't compatible with what I was looking, and you can get something for as little as $15. But then again, it would have been way too wide and too short, or wide enough but, or long enough but way too wide. So my idea was, okay, why don't I go shopping at a wood place instead and make the grate myself. So I went to this place here, Lingerie Forêt, which is an exotic woods purveyor, and here they have like little samples. And if you notice, I think these samples are something like 24 inches by 3 inches. So that was ideal because obviously they're slightly too long, but they're wide enough in the sense that we don't have to go any wider than that or any thinner. And I was liking this particular variety in that it kind of came close, but it wasn't an exact match. So the other issue is these little sections of wood are about 1/4 inch in thickness. So that would have required a lot of fancy cutting, and African woods are very hard. So you really need high-speed tools that will, you know, just cut through them, and it's easier said than done. So, but I was on the right path, I think. Because you see, even if it meant I was spending close to $50, I would have gotten an exotic wood that would have at least come close, and then I would have had to worry about making the vent holes. But I thought differently. And so basically what I ended up doing is I ended up going there and I ended up buying some wood. I'm going to turn on some lights here. I ended up looking in their African wood section, and if you notice, if your memory is pretty good, this is pretty close. There is some like variations, but all of the color hues, like basically they're all in like lateral lines, but it isn't an exact copy, but it could have come close. It could have come close, and if you notice, this is how thick it was. Okay. And then I went to one of my favorite materials, which is balsa wood. So balsa wood, you can get in, you know, all different kinds of shapes and sizes. Balsa wood was used to make airplane wings back in the day when they made airplane wings out of wood. It's extremely light and strong, and they were able to get flexible airplane wings that could withstand, you know, flight and takeoff and landing. And I think they just like covered it with like a canvas and some kind of maybe an epoxy to harden a shell, and that is excellent, and it's really soft. You can stick your nail in it and it will dent. So this is 1/4 inch. I was able to get half the thickness of this in the same size, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, why don't I cut out all the vents on a very easy to cut piece of balsa and then just figure out the finishing part afterwards. And so that's what I did. But how to do that? So this is where we're going to explore. So I went looking for photographs of grates that had a particular vent pattern to them, and I ended up choosing this one. So why did I choose this one? Well, let me just fix the light. So you can see there's an even pattern here, and there's something called it's called Adobe Capture, and it will take any photograph of something and then reduce it just to black and white lines. So I'll give you an example of hold on a second. Okay, an example of this. So you can see, if you're looking at what I'm showing you here, it's reducing the image to very simple black and white language. So you can get a file, you can get actually just a photograph, or you can get like an SVG file, which is like a graphics file that you can scale to any size you want, and it'll work great. So let me just show you a little bit about. You can see you can play with this, or let me just in black. So this is a very handy app when you're looking for patterns. Now, why did I do this? Well, I'll explain it to you. So when you're happy with what you have, you just click on your this button here, and it'll save it. Now, smooth lines, or you can clean up things, and depending on how complicated it is, it will do it. So I ended up doing, and I'll explain the reason why. Okay, so I basically had this reduced to a black and white outline. Then what I ended up doing is saving it into something called Designer, which is this. So watch what happens when I do this. Do you see how, the original one was about tick, and I made with Adobe Capture. So I printed it out on an 8.5 by 11, and then I measured it, with like what my printout gave me, and it was a little bit wider than what I wanted. So based on that original one, I then shortened it a bit and measured it again, and I had exactly 1.75 inch width on my 8.5 by 11 sheet. So I ended up printing 2 per page, 2 sides per page. It just meant that I fed the paper into the printer twice, and it always printed one of these sections on one side, and then I fed it in again, and then it did the other one. So these were the correct width, and I had 2 because I needed 17 inches. So an 8.5 by 11 isn't making two printouts. Then I'm able to juxtapose one on top of the other, and I have the length that I want in one go. So that's what I ended up doing. And so I ended up with something like this. Now this is the stencil that I made, that I printed out, and it's already been cut out. So how did I cut it out? That's an interesting explanation I'm going to give you. So I basically taped it to my thin piece of balsa, which is like half the width of this, or the depth of this, and I basically taped it on, and I found the center part of each vent, and I'll show you the photograph of that. So that would be not this one, not this one, not this one, one of these. Well, basically what I did was I made a mark thing with a point, like right there in the middle, and then you look to see where your drill won't surpass the edge that you see here. And so each center edge was marked with a pinpoint that is a pilot hole, that the point of this drill would go precisely into the desired place. And I basically ended up, see, this is the thin piece of balsa wood that I've already colored. So as you can see, the drill hole would go at either end, and then the rest was cut out with an X-Acto knife and a ruler. So I was able to make a straight line, not going beyond this edge. Let me turn on some lights. Not going beyond this edge, and then just slice into the balsa several times. But when you use a metal-edged ruler, you're able to make a straight line. And if you notice here, you get chattering marks, because when the drill would come through from this side, from the top here, it would like chatter a little bit. So you get a little bit of here you are, you see. So it kind of weakens because balsa is very thin and fragile if you mishandle it. All right. So that's basically the story as to how I cut out all the vents. And if you notice, the vents are very equidistant. This is the original stencil I used, and you know, it was perfect, and it was easy to print out. It was easy to make from a photograph that had very even vent lines. All right, so then the problem is now what to do. Now what to do with, here's the photograph. This is how I marked it. Whoops. This is how it was marked. If you notice, there are my pilot holes right there. And that was before I drilled out every single ends. Okay. So then what was left to do? Okay, so I basically stained the, you know, this is basically kind of like what it looked like in the first staining, but this is the back. And then I needed to make, we'll look at the original photograph of the closet with the African wood. If you notice, you can see it's like a, you know, very thin lines, very parallel, some light, some dark, some medium brown tones. We'll find another photograph. Here's another one. You can kind of get a sense of the color. So I needed to imitate this on my piece of balsa. So how to do this is I made a rig, and these are metal wires. They're about 17 inches in length, and I put them side by side in order to make very thin lines. and I put a piece of masking tape underneath them so that they would hold them into place. And basically what I ended up doing is making like a stamping process where I would paint the wires, and then I would place the face of the thing on top of the wires. I'll show you the wire rig. See, they've had many coats of paint. So I started with the light colored sections, and then I did some black ones, and then I did some brown ones, and this is now the brown ones. So you can see all the ends, they're all side by side on tape. And this is how I was able to make this effect. If you notice, you see how all the lines are like different colors. So this is what I use to imitate the African wood that we're trying to imitate. And so that's how far we've gotten. And if you imagine if this was like upside down and on the ceiling, with the rest covering the vent, it would probably just blend in as it is, even though it's not a perfect match. It's close enough that the eye won't really detect, you can say, well, they just didn't have the exact piece of wood to fit in place, but it's close enough. And that basically with the shading and everything that'll occur, I can always do some more printing. So basically how it works is a fresh coat of paint would be painted on this, and then it would just be pressed, or basically it lies like this, and this would be pressed on, and then with pressure you just do that, and then you lift it off, and then you have a little print of whatever color you've painted on. So that's how I got that underway. And how it's going to fit into place. Let's find a photograph of the opening. Here's the opening with the vent dimensions. As you can see, it's 17 inches by 1 3/4. So these dimensions are 3 inches wide, and I can't remember if it's 19 or 19 and a half or 19 3/8, something there in fact. So basically you have this edge here, on the other side you have this edge here. So it's just the hole that has the vents on them, and then this aluminum will be hidden behind this aspect, so you shouldn't really be able to see the aluminum flashing that's there. Okay, so now what? Well, how do we clip it to how do we fit this fragile piece? Well, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut little pieces of wire that are on this after I've finished using this, and I'm going to glue little even length sections of wire on the balsa so that if this ever gets handled, it won't break, because there'll be like an armature, a little wire that will make sure that here or here it won't break off, because it will break if it's handled improperly. Okay, and then so this is what I'm going to do as to how to fix it into place. Is I'm going to use little rare earth magnets. They're really thin. If you see how thin it is, it's not that thick, and they will be glued into place. I'm going to be installing 6 magnets, and I'm going to make a register as to where they get placed. So there'll be one here, one here, one in the middle, or 2 in the middle, and then 2 more at each end. And what I'll do is I'll make a paper stencil, and I will, in fact, there's a little hole here. This is a little extra magnet inside there that's covering the hole, but I'll remove that. So these will be glued into place, and I'll make a stencil as to where they are, and then I can put that stencil over this, and I know exactly where to drill my little holes, and all I need to do is put a very thin metal washer on the ceiling part, and these magnets will clip to the washer, so you can easily remove it for servicing if you want. And with the added support of thin wires that I'll be cutting eventually later today, what I'll do is I'll have evenly spaced wires, like just one in the middle, and then I'll probably have one or two along the entire length of the grate, and that'll make this a little bit more handle friendly. So if some guy who comes in to service it 5 years from now doesn't understand how it was made, it'll have a fighting chance to be unclipped, because the magnets will only hold in place, but you know, it's not immovable. All right, so what's left to do, well, is I need to clean up inside some of these holes. So this is what we're going to do today. I'm just going to move some of my electronics out of the way, and we're going to do some work. So this is I love this little tool. It's my little handheld grinding tool, and I already started, I think, from here, and I made my way about here, and I still have to. If you notice here, you can see we've got to clean up in where the curve is. So I have 3 speeds, 1, 2, 3. Alrighty. So we're going to, there we are. So balsa is a very soft wood, but it's also like, it won't bend, like it holds its own, but you really don't need, like, you know, all of these holes were cut out by X-Acto knives, and the drill holes that I left here. So now that it's had some varnish already put on it, it's a little stronger, because the varnish has a way of behaving like a glue, and it makes like a kind of a durable skin. So I can go in, and these edges are a little more grind friendly. So I can go in there, clean up very quickly. And if I end up taking any color out from here, I can always come in after the fact and color those openings without any problems. So if you look, everything looks pretty even Steven. I mean, they might not exactly be, you know, laser cut, like machine cut, but they're close enough that the eye reads them as, hey, they're, you know, like from a distance, they look pretty even Steven. But this is really handmade. It was a lot easier to make it this way with the balsa and then just do a faux finish than it would have been had I, if I had an African piece of wood in the same variety. I doubt if I would have been able to cut out all of these holes without cracking, because exotic lend themselves well to these kind of work without cracking, whereas balsa is a lot more forgiving. Even if you were to break one of these off, you can easily glue it back into place, and you could, you know, it won't be an issue. So here I am, just finishing up with my high-speed tool. So I don't know if anybody's in the room or not because I have not seen any comments. It is in the middle of the day, so it's a work day. It's ice, there's ice rain outdoors, so luckily I didn't have to go out and do any errands today, because literally there's like a coat of ice on everybody's car that's parked outdoors. Okay. So that pretty well concludes this. So what I'll do is I'll, like I said, I'll cut even amounts of metal wire, glue them onto each individual length, and then glue in some little magnets into the corners, and that should settle that. I'm sorry for coffee. So I might have a follow-up broadcast. So thanks for coming in. Bye for now.